Thank you for inviting me here. And I can say the lion's share of the research came from Working Men's Institute. The other information got me here. And then it was 2 years of being here that got me to the next step. Again, I said I moved that slide just because it was too dense and it was in the wrong spot, and I just thought I'd start with that because this was going to happen in Missouri, but most of I'm going to talk about happens in New Harmony. It's 1st Indiana Cavalry, first to serve, first to fall. And this is the truth of the Civil War. I'm on the Vanderbilt County Historical Society board, and we were doing a project spearheaded by Bill Bartelt over there. It was the Civil War in Evansville, and we were looking at various topics and what the Evansville papers were saying about the Civil War. African Americans, the election of 1860, secession, commerce, whatever else. And I was doing camps and recruitment, and in the process, I ran across these accounts from Stan Schmidt of the Vanderbilt County historian of 4 funerals that happened in southern Indiana, almost, well, 3 of them on the same day, 1 of them 3 days later. And these 4 men, Major John Smith Gavitt of Evansville, Private Charles McLean of Evansville. Private McLean was 17 years, 10 months, and 4 days old. He had been in his commanding officer, Conrad Baker's Sunday school class. And he went off to war with his boss, with his Sunday school teacher. Major John Smith Gavitt was the county sheriff in Evansville, town marshal in Evansville, 4th Ward city council person in Evansville, Democrat, popular figure. Both Democrat national conventions. He had a good story. Captain John Kell Highman is from here. He was from actually Northern Lynn Township, and I think he's very closely linked to the Harmonists. That's a generation who came in here. And then Corporal Alexander Allison is in Poseyville. Major John Smith Gavitt, Charles McLean, same funeral. 13,000 people in Evansville show up. On the same day, John Kell Hyman's funeral in New Harmony, 3,000 people. 3 days later, Corporal Allison in Poseyville, 1,500 people. Now what's happened is this unit, this regiment, is organized locally. And when a local unit, like this regiment of cavalry, is involved in a battle where there are losses, it hits a community hard. And this is early in the war. And I think what fascinates me about this is the reaction of the communities to realize the deaths of these people. There's a point at which it's so common, I don't think they would have had 13,000 people show up because they were burying them all the time. But this was the first. John Smith Gavitt is the distinction of being the first officer from Indiana killed in battle. John Hyman, first officer from Posey County, killed in battle. I don't know if you want that distinction, but that's their distinction. Basic background, only a little bit. Fort Sumter, start there. The Confederates fired on Fort Sumter. That's an act of aggression. There's lots of other issues we can talk about, but they'll take too much time. But once the Confederates fired on Fort Sumter, Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers. Governor Morton of Indiana says, well, we can send 10,000. And then there's going to be a call for people to come in and volunteer to stop the aggression. And April 12th is Sumter. By April 20, there was a big meeting in New Harmony at the Thrall Opera House, the Union House, in response to the call from the governor for the volunteers. Republicans, Democrats alike. Harmony Township voted for Stephen Douglas. It was Democrat by a small amount. Lynn Township below us was Republican. Posey County was Democrat, but Indiana went Republican. They agreed the issue is putting the country back together, preserving the government, and they will get away from their political differences and try to answer the governor's call. They agreed to form an infantry company locally here in New Harmony and a home guard unit. And the infantry company is the Union Rifles, Captain George Washington Saltzman. He's another story, the 25th Indiana, but there's George Washington. It's a picture from here. The home guard unit is the Harmony Rangers, and it was initially under the command of Richard Owen, the son of Robert. This is April 24th. It's a call for volunteers to come to the all persons favorable to the immediate organization of a company of mounted men for home defense. They thought they were going in for home defense. To be organized under the militia law and to be armed with sabers, carbines, and revolvers are invited to attend a meeting at Union Hall on the evening of Wednesday, April 24th, 1861, at early candle lighting. I don't know what time that is, but I guess they would know that. The superior efficiency of such force, especially against lawless bands united for plunder, is too well known to need remark. So they think they're going to have trouble with Kentucky. And so they're forming these home guards. Talk to John Kell Highman or Julian Dale Owen, or go to the, I'm going to say Fredijo store, okay? And this is run by Madam's son. Governor Morton appoints Richard Owen, and Richard Owen's the captain of that cavalry unit, but he's appointed to be lieutenant governor of the 15th Indiana in Lafayette. So he's off to Lafayette. And then he's eventually going to become colonel of the 60th, and that'll put him in Evansville, and then put him down in some major fighting. So Richard Owen didn't stay in New Harmony. So John Kell Highman then is elected to be the captain of the Harmony Rangers, which will become Company C of the 1st Indiana Cavalry Regiment. So that's the process where he got here. I couldn't take that slide out. I just left it in there because how dreadful it would be to live without men, exclaimed a young girl with tears in her eyes on hearing that another valued friend had volunteered. Richard Owen went to Lafayette. He took the New Harmony band and a large number of people with him. When he went to the 60th, he took a large number of people too. In fact, the editor of the paper, he shut it down and went with Richard Owen. The Harmony Rangers, Company C, George Washington's company in the 25th Regiment, men were leaving this town. I guess it was desperate for young girls. So John Kell Highman. He was born in 1824. His parents are Robert and Catherine. He's one of 5 children. He had a brother who went with him in Company C. He's named after John Kell, that's where the Kell, a Presbyterian circuit rider. His parents moved to Posey County from Pennsylvania, probably, I don't know this, probably Butler County, that's where the Harmonists are from. They moved in 1815. That's the federal land records. They came here from Pennsylvania in 1815. He married Jane Wilson. That picture's from here. That's Jane. I think that's a later picture of Jane. they have 8 kids, so I'll give you maybe a better shot. But she's 2 years older. Her parents are Robert and Elizabeth. They did move here from Butler County, Pennsylvania. The family stories, they have been met by the Harmonists at Mount Vernon, and they helped them come to their farm in Lynn Township. So they are part of the experimental community, and they didn't leave. There's a part of it, now it's another whole area of research, how many people were there from Pennsylvania who came here who did not settle here, but settled around here and maybe stayed. I think probably quite a few of them. She married John Kell in 1845. She's one of 10 children. Because I think it's a later picture. Those are sort of, yes, sir.
You know what the population of New Harmony was?
Robert Owen said it was about 850. About 850 is what it was at that time period. These pictures are side by side in the archives back there, but I think he's a much younger man there than she. Those are 2 of their daughters. I think that maybe somewhere will give an idea of what that younger woman might have looked like when she married John Kell. They bought a farm in Lynn Township. They have 8 children, and she's actually pregnant with the 9th when he left. He was a farmer and a flatboater. He says in some of his letters he's a flatboater. He took his produce from here to New Orleans and sold his boat and brought the stuff back from New Orleans up the old plank road, which I think was real close to their house at that time. 1861, he was 37, she was 39, they were their children. Interesting that Lewis never went off to war. And he could have, that's early. And then one is she's still carrying the one baby. That's the farm. It's in Lynn Township. That's the work from the county recorder's office. That's the farmer Martin Redmond today. And I'm standing on the edge of State Road 69 when I took this picture. And that's from Google. And I was right here taking that picture. There's the farm that wasn't the farm that John Kell had. Their farm was over here, I think. Bill Bartelt helped me track this down one day, and I think we got lucky and found, I think this is where they were. It's described as being on the bluff banks of Rush Creek. And their farm stretches from here up and a little bit over. Up here's the fairgrounds. Over here would be entrance to Harmony Park. And this little part is not yet in Harmony Park. That home belongs to the sister of Martha Breeze. I can't remember her first name. They had the abstract and the proof that that was John Kell Highman and Jane Hyman's property. Again, there it is. The second house was real close to where Martin Redmond's is right now. So they were closely related to life in New Harmony, and they seemed to take their social life here, and they were highly respected. He was the Grand Marshal of the Second Posey County Fair. I know he brought supplies at the Fredericksville store because it's in the probate records. He was a member of the International Order of Oddfellows. You have all the records of the Oddfellows here in this building, and that's how that comes about. And there's this in there, and I don't know what this is. I don't know enough about the Oddfellows to know if this was a ritual or not, but it's a paper with a description from 6 people: Horatio Cooper, John Cooper, Robert Dale Owen. You see who he's hanging out with. Benjamin Neal, George Washington Saltzman, who had that other company, and then John Kell Highman. Not in his handwriting, I know that, because we got letters and he can't write. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that striketh closer than a brother. So he wasn't, in fact, the Oddfellows, I think, paid for his funeral. So the timeline of this New Harmony Rangers, Company C, 1st Indiana Cavalry. They organized, actually it's probably April 20th, through July 16, 1861, and then they went off to Evansville. Also, Charles Slater shut down the newspaper. I wish he'd kept it open because he had a neat newspaper here. He shut it down and went with Richard Owen. On July 16th, it didn't take him a day to get there. To the 21st, they're in Evansville. Then they're in St. Louis until about the 15th. And then they moved down to Ironton. I'll show you these on the map. And they're there well after the story ends. The Battle of Fredericktown is on October 21st, 1861. And until I met Ryan Rokicki, nobody in the world had ever heard of that, right? Of course, Ryan had. Where are you, Ryan? Are you back there? And I think he knew everybody in it. Letters and journals are sort of pick up the story. Alexander Fredericksville was 20 years old. He joined Company C. And he wrote a journal, and he wrote letters, and he's interesting. He's a whole story by himself. Because if you want a little picture of New Harmony, May to July of 1861, Alexander will give it to you. His brother, I hear I'm supposed to say a chill, but I can't. I just can't make myself do it. It's the Anglo in me, I guess. So Achilles, he's 18. He kept a journal and wrote letters. Belle Wheatcroft, 19. She appears in a lot of these letters, and I struck out some of her letters, but there's a lot of letters from or to her. John Kell wrote letters. They're here in this institute. And Jane wrote letters to John. They're here in this institute. That's probably the only picture that is true to the Civil War. That was actually the previous director had located that, but it's the Fredericksville store, Community House number 2. And the store's in here, and I think the New Harmony Advertiser's up there, right? And I don't know who the people are. There's 4 people in the picture. But that's